Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and here with the composer of Life of Pi, the new play on Broadway, is Andrew T. MacKay. And there is, Andrew, an astounding amount of music in the Life of Pi. It seems like, to my ears, nearly the whole thing is scored, which is pretty rare for a play. How did you sort of determine that that was going to be needed for this piece?
I think you're absolutely right, Sam. There is a lot of music, and it's unusual for a play. You normally get intros, outros, scene changes, that sort of thing. But I think in conversation with the director, Max Webster, who's very musical, he's got a very musical mind, he wanted the music to be a very integral part of the storytelling. And yeah, quite a thing to do, because a lot of music. And I think with my past experience of film, scoring for films, it almost feels like it's that sort of cinematic journey.
Yeah. And I understand you had a interesting process of actually scoring this inside the rehearsal studio while the actors were rehearsing. Can you just talk a little bit about that? How did you arrive
Sure.
at that process?
Yeah, that's a very good comment there. I think that this being my first ever theatre foray, I didn't know what the process was for writing for theatre. So I had to just do what I figured would be the right thing to do. And although I'd written a series of pieces of music in advance on conversations with the director, the parameters, the feel of things, we wanted to have three sort of sections. There was the Indian's part, the Indian story where Pi is at home, his family, the links during the play that go back to his emotional connect with the family. Then there was the more sort of dramatic, cinematic moments of destruction and the toil and the pain and suffering. And then there was the more ecstatic sort of elements of him on the ocean, which was kind of the more spiritual side of things. So there was three sides to the music. So having written these initial ideas, I decided to set my studio up in the rehearsal space and let those rehearsals unfold in front of me. Had my headphones on, I was writing away, and then I was putting bits of music into the rehearsal space, getting an instant reaction from not only the creators, but from the actors themselves. And it was not that it was a good way of getting approval of my music, but it was getting the approval that it worked, and that was a really, really exciting process. So instant reaction from the cast and crew, which is not something that happens in feature film scoring.
No, I don't even know if it happens on stage recording until
Well,
now.
it probably doesn't actually. So I'd be interested to know how other people work, but that was the process that I chose. It seemed to work out okay.
So did you then have kind of actors going, "Oh, wait a minute, that's great for my, the emotion I have right now, more of that." Were they making kind of requests
I,
of
th-
you?
I th- well, there was a little bit. It was more like what tends to happen if someone's got a monologue or they've got dialogue, and then in the later stages of the play, some music is placed underneath it. Then it kind of throws them. So the music was going in really early, and the most of the comments I got that it helped them create that character or build on the character that they've built themselves. So and some of them said, "Andrew, you're really killing me with that melody in a good way." So and also I found out there's some secret dances that go on backstage to certain bits of music before the cast go on that the crew get involved with as well. I'm not sure if I should say about that, but I've been sent secret videos, and it's a real honor actually.
That's great. I mean, besides that kind of instant feedback, what is kind of the biggest difference, or what did you get the most out of that type of live scoring versus your normal routine in the studio?
That's a really good question, Sam. I think it was just that response, that seeing how it worked on a visceral level. When you're scoring for feature film, you may have the director visit you, you may meet the cast and crew at the premiere, and that's it. But this was, I mean, I really felt like theatre was a family, and a really rewarding one. And all the different casts from the beginning through to Broadway have been, they're incredible people, and I think everybody responds to music in some way. I think everyone, certainly in theatre, I mean, just in life generally, music is something that you can't switch off from. It's something that really affects you. And that was such a great experience during the whole process of getting that response, and helping me figure the story, helping me to figure the direction that I was going in.
Yeah. You mentioned a bit before about sort of the three parts you had divided it into in your mind. But in terms of beyond the sound, the types of instruments you wanted to incorporate in, how did you land on how those orchestrations would sound?
That's a very good point as well, actually. The Indian side, I chose the bansuri, which is the Indian flute, a wooden flute, which is it's something very evocative and something very comfortable as to a Western ear, but something that really kind of gives that feeling of a sense of place. And that was really important. And the percussion, the tabla, Indian percussion, that was all something that I chose. And just the sort of harmonic progressions in the Indian side of things. So we got that feel, but also making it available to the Western ear. That was really important. So that was kind of that section. Then the dramatic thing, I just chose the orchestra with big strings, which is a live orchestra that I recorded in advance, and brass and percussion. So that was kind of like the Richard Parker fighting, or the dramatic elements, the ship going down, etc., etc. And that kind of worked really well. And then there was the third one, which is a more what I call more ambient sort of thing. That was more sort of layers of sound design and synthesizer pads and sounds that I created to give that sort of spiritual side of things. And so I think, one of the things that I do at the beginning actually is look for a palette of sounds, almost like a color palette. And what are the instruments that will work for that emotion? So that was something that I was very aware of on this.
Hmm. I was wondering if you would say that you spend a lot of time experimenting with sound, because what I remember one point that stuck out to me was when the ship is going down, there is this meeting of strings with these more kind of industrial, harder noises that kind of come together and is very appropriate for a clash, but you wouldn't, or I wouldn't at least, naturally put those together. Does that take a lot of experimentation to come up with something like that?
I think that's a very good observation. You're absolutely right. There are these industrial sounds. The sound design that Carolyn Downing has done, which is the sort of rain, the thunder, the ship creaking, that sort of thing was a very important bed. That how could I work alongside that? So you have the natural sounds. How can I create that drama, that that emotion, but through the instruments? And I felt, big orchestra, big percussion, big brass, and against that sort of metallic feeling of this big metal ship that is not invincible, that the orchestra is almost like helping bring it down.
Yeah. And would you say you're someone who, do you work in composing like themes for a character, or is it more just about what a scene itself needs?
That's a very good point. I think what I've tried to do is to give the feel, sometimes not necessarily a melody, but the sound. So those three distinct sounds to help to tell that story. But there are a couple of melodies that come back when Richard Parker leaves, when Pi is on the ship, and they are thematic. So I think for something so vast, you need to have quite a lot of variety, because there are times where there's no dialogue and it's just music and action, almost like a ballet per se.
Have you ever had that's a good point, where the score does feel like a character in this, I would say. Is that a new avenue for you to explore? Have you ever had a piece where it's been that prominent?
Not well, as I say, this is my first theatre. After that, I did Henry V with Kit Harington at the Donmar in London, which was choral music over 300 years, completely different. But I think that in something like this, you're trying to enhance the story, but because there's so much music and it has to help tell that story, so it becomes a character, but it's intrinsically linked with the character that you're pursuing or writing for.
Yeah. And besides your new invention of composing this in the room with everyone, what would you say is kind of the biggest difference or shift in your work between composing for a piece of theater versus film?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a camaraderie, there's a joyousness that exists in theatre. Not that doesn't exist in film, but there's a lot of solitude in film in film scoring. When you get into the studio, then you've got all the musicians. But and in the same way, I suppose there's that writing on your own during theatre. But I think it was because you get an instant reaction. Certainly, watching the show with the audience, you know, you can sit in a theatre, in a cinema rather, and feel that emotion. But it's something very, very visceral and very informative, and I really enjoyed that.
Is there anything that changed for you after seeing like an audience reaction? Was there a different rewrite or something that you went back to?
Well, there's been a bit of a process of change with some scenes from the beginning, because when you get into a new venue, and because these venues were long lasting, they weren't just like a 2-week run or something. How did it fit the space? Sometimes, you know, something could change for the better, and often the director say, "Andrew, I've got a new idea for this." So I say, "Okay, Max, let's have a listen." And most of his ideas were genius. So I did, one thing I learned was to try. You must always try changes. So there's a couple of things on the Broadway score that's not that wasn't in the West End, and that was quite exciting to change that. So there's some transitions that happened through the Boston show as well. So by the time it arrived on Broadway, it was pretty much ready, but there were still, after production meetings, after the previews, this could change, or could we do something with this? Or I'd say, you know, I had a few ideas as well. So, yeah, it's nice to have that freedom, that this is not just set. This could be improved.
Yeah, sure. And there's a lot of different, you know, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different types of sounds and styles in this. When you think of yourself as a composer, do you sort of have an idea of this is the type of I make X type of music? Do you think that in those terms?
Well, I think as a composer, you've got to have a niche. Otherwise, if you say I can do all music, it sounds very pompous, and it's probably not true. So my kind of niche, I mean, I spent years living in India and working in India. So that was one of the draws, I guess, of getting me to do this, because it was someone who could handle the Indian side of things and orchestral. So I would say that I am sort of Indian orchestral electronica, which is still quite a wide range, but it gives a bit of a glimpse of what's possible without being too wide.
Well, you might be able to corner that, because I think that's a pretty specific, you know, very visual area there. I don't know.
Well, I think that's what exists in Life of Pi. So it's a good calling card
for sure. Yeah, it's a perfect fit. And now that you've kind of gotten a taste of this theater world, what like, if you're looking ahead, would you want to do? Is there a certain type of theater that you're dying to explore, or a different process that you're dying to explore?
Well, I'm not sure, you know, what other plays specifically I would like to do. You know, it may be some more Shakespeare, but I would love to do more theatre. There's no doubt. I have been hooked, and I've been hooked and pulled in, and I'm in the keep net. So it's definitely something that I would like to pursue. I've never done musicals, but I've written songs, so collaboration would be very interesting. But certainly, I hope this is the beginning of a long theatre career, because I'm very much enjoying it.
Well, the theater bug is very strong. Once it gets its hooks in you, it doesn't let go. I can tell you.
Is that what you felt from your side of the fence?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's a good, you know, the community you feel is very much alive in it.
I think that's the thing, the community. That's a very good word. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's incredible work in Life of Pi. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sitting with me. Everyone, check out Life of Pi on Broadway. Stay subscribed to us at Gold Derby throughout this season. And Andrew, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Sam. All the very best to you.